Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield on this Tuesday, June 10th, following the Allay Open over in Sweden, a full Pro Tour event on the calendar. Josh, I hope you had a great weekend. I want to dive right in today. We got a lot to get to. We've got some mailbag. We got to talk about, of course, all of our picks and all that's good stuff. But also we're going to talk about this Allay Open and history made. Silva Saarinen, for the first time in her career, defeats Kristin for a victory at a tournament. Only one other time in almost 25 Elite Series and major starts when both players were in the field had Silva even finished ahead of Kristin. That was earlier this year at the Champions Cup. Now she actually has a win. She beats Kristin down the stretch, comes from behind to win the Allay Open. And despite the fact that no one else was even really in the conversation, Josh, it feels like we might look back on this moment for years to come.
It's so funny because Silva, and it almost feels appropriate. Remember Silva's arc story. She was a young player when the Disc Golf Pro Tour first implemented their Silver Series over in Europe. Most players were not going over. It was like Paul and James Proctor, and then everyone else was still playing the US side because there were no full-fledged DGPT events until PCS Sula. And so you would have all the Europeans playing the silver, basically a silver tour over in Europe. And that year, Silva won 6 or 7 events. I mean, just cleaned house, set records in Europe, was winning by, handfuls of strokes, cleaning house. And it was like, okay, what's it going to look like when Silva comes over? And she came over and she had nice performances her first year. 2024, it's not like it was a bad year for her by any stretch of the imagination, especially for a player who's coming from what was very much a different competition style and level than what you're going to see on the full-fledged tour with the best touring professionals in the world. And she did well in 2024. And actually, Charlie, I'll save you having to do a mulligan later. It was 2024 Champions Cup that Silva finished ahead of Kristin. Remember, Kristin finished second this year behind Missy with the foot fault,
of course,
fiasco. So it was 2024. Silva had some good performances in 2024, but it wasn't until this year that you really saw Silva elevate to being one of the top contenders on tour. But unfortunately, was falling to Kristin. And so for Silva to get to go back
in horrendous fashion, often.
Correct. Yes. Yes. It wasn't losing in shootouts, right? It was losing in kind of a collapsing fashion. And so for Silva to get to go back over to Europe, where the spotlight is just and has been on her and Kristin.
Yep.
Top 2 players. No question that they are going to be 1-2. The only question is the order. And Silva, who has won this tournament, comes back, defends, wins it again.
I think storyline. Yeah. And I think what you said probably bears like a little bit more digging, which is that you said Silva's clearly number 2 in Europe right now. And that's, Evelina won Worlds last year. Evelina had multiple wins. She had the best season of her career. But I actually agree with you. I think that Silva has surpassed Evelina on a week-to-week basis right now. Now, part of that is that Evelina hasn't really been playing the last couple of weeks. She's out of sight, out of mind. The putting's been a little bit more of a problem than it was last year. But I genuinely think that I agree with you, that Silva has elevated her game to the point where she's clearly the second best European player in FPO. But I mean, you talk about her 2024, all of that's true. Remember, at GMC, she should have won last year.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was heartbreak down the stretch to Kristin. Goes OB on 18. Then they go to the playoff. She can't make the putt. Rolls out of bounds. It was just horrendous disaster. And then we basically replay a similar scenario at Music City a few weeks ago, where Silva looked like the best player there. She was in total control. And then it just one out of position tee shot on 17 ends up being, forehand disaster, doesn't get up and down. Like Kristin goes incredible shot making down the stretch, hits the huge putt, the monster drive on 18. And like, you got to tip your cap in some ways. Like Kristin has found a way with only like sort of slight door opening from Silva. This was not the case this weekend. Silva did not open the door. It was Kristin that looked a little off, that couldn't make the circle 2 putts. We dig into all of this a bunch in our rapid reacts that we did yesterday, which you can check out as a subscriber, discgolf.ultiroll.com/subscribe. But, you know, despite the fact that this was not like, it's going to be one of the weakest fields of the season at a Pro Tour event, right? If you do a field strength metric,
sure.
Who cares? Silva beating Kristin is like the thing that she has needed to get over this mental hump. And you could see how much it meant to her. She was in tears for minutes following that round.
I've just come to the point that if Silva's on final card or lead card and like in contention and at the end of the tournament, that I am also going to be in tears. Whether she wins, whether she loses, either way. But it really was a spectacular performance from Silva. One thing that we noted in the reacts down the stretch, hole 15, hole 16, hole 17, Silva is, or maybe it was 14, 15, 16. Silva had successful scrambles, which is where she has lost it in the past when she gets out of position. Her putter never failed her, which when that's your, you know, really your differentiation of, you know, against the field, then it's critical that you're able to maintain that. And so she did everything right. She did everything right. And it really was a remarkable performance. And like you said, Charlie, I don't care about the field strength metric. Silva beats Kristin in a DGPT event worth full points. And that's the story. You don't need an asterisk. You don't need anything else around it. Silva conquered a demon this week, and it was a spectacular round to watch if you have not yet.
Yeah, and you're on the edge of your seat thinking, is she going to mess up this upshot onto 18's green and go into the hazard and like crack open the door a little bit? Didn't happen. Like she made the shots down the stretch, and for once it feels like Kristin didn't have the answers when she was in chase mode against Silva. Silva now moves into 4th place on the DGPT standings, about 90 points behind Kristin. Missy is in 2nd, and then almost 200 points ahead of Missy is Holland. That's how good she's been, and obviously winning at the Pro Tour Plus event worth the 200 points is pretty nice. She's won both Plus events, by the way, Holland.
That's a lot of bonus points.
Holland is the clear favorite to finish first in the Pro Tour standings right now. Obviously, lots of season left and lots of crossover events with Kristin, but that you have to think she's out in front by a pretty good distance. What do you think this means for Silva moving forward? Because winning this event is cool. It's cathartic. It's, you know, it's going to be memorable for her, but this is not a major. This is not even like a well-attended Pro Tour event in the United States. So does this translate into future wins for Silva, do you think?
I have to think so. I think there's 2 elements to this win that kind of give me like a yes and a no. On the one hand, I don't think you're going to have the same kind of mental collapses to the same extent that we have seen from Silva. And in that sense, it really does feel like a page is being turned. On the flip side, Silva does still have some limitations to her game that need to be developed. I highlight the scrambling as being something of particular note. Silva is not particularly comfortable with the forehand. And that limitation to scramble, especially if pressure is high and she pulls a drive a little bit down the stretch, is going to continue to cost her and be an issue. She is going to have to develop a game management system that takes that into account and recognizes that there may be some holes that scrambling is just not in the cards for her because of that limitation.
I hear you, but I also think she just needs to learn forehand. Like,
I agree. But that's not something that comes out overnight. And so my point is, if we see Silva lose down the stretch again, I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think it'll be the same. It's not going to feel the same. I don't think it'll look the same. I think that case is due to a limitation of game, not because I think she's going to continue to be plagued by the same, late mental game issues that have caused her those issues in the past.
Sure. By the way, crazy stat here.
Okay.
Kristin is number 1 in scramble percentage. She's 10% higher than Missy.
Wow.
Kristin's at 58%. Missy is at 47%. And Missy's in second. That's crazy. But I think that really speaks to the quality of the forehand, right? I mean, that is her ability to get out of jail with that throw is unparalleled. And we know that.
Yes. And Silva, here's the difference, right? If you look at scramble percentage, it goes Kristin, Missy, Holland, right? Top 3. Right now, I think, I don't know how you argue those aren't the top 3 players on tour.
Clearly.
And then you have several players before you drop down to Silva, who is in 6th, who is a full 16 percentage points behind Kristin, and 5.5 percentage points behind Holland. Right. So if you imagine every tournament has, at least 54 holes, then you have to imagine that Silva is losing 2 to 3 strokes to Holland every tournament on scramble alone. And that's right, assuming it's not double bogeys. But and that's a big difference. That's a lot of strokes.
Right.
It's a lot of strokes at these margins.
I mean, and that's what it's all about at this level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the stats actually start to really mean something at the highest end of the professional game, because a 5 percentage point improvement in your circle 1 putting can mean a stroke or 2 per event. And like, eventually that leads to podium finishes instead of top 5s, or wins instead of second places. And like, that's what makes the stats interesting, I think. Now, if you're in the middle of the pack, it's only so meaningful. But basically, we kind of know the story with Silva. She's become a top 5 player in most critical categories. And then she's arguably the best all-around putter on tour. She's 3rd in C1 right now, and 2nd in C2. Paige has her by a couple of tenths of a percent in C2. And Deanne Carey stands alone right now in C1. I mean, what we're talking about, an epic season if she can keep it up. 92.8% right now. I mean, that's like the upper tier of MPO putting from Circle 1. Yeah. So super elite from Deanne Carey. She's almost 10% above Owen Scoggins, who's a couple percentage points ahead of Silva. So Silva has basically taken the kind of like classic, I'm a great putter model, but I don't do much else, a la like a Heather Young throwback for many people. Some people now are probably like, who's that?
It's crazy.
I mean, even Owen to an extent, but obviously Owen has added so much to her ability in the fairways and tee to green. But Silva's level tee to green keeps going up, and she's now where she used to be kind of an underpowered thrower. That's just not the case anymore. I mean, she maybe has limitations with the forehand and with the hyzer flip style, but like distance wise, it's not a limitation anymore with the backhand.
Yeah. 5th in Circle 1 in regulation, 7th in Circle 2 in regulation, 5th in parked percentage. And, don't get me wrong. She is 6 percentage points behind Kristin in parked percentage, who is ahead of Evelina by another 2.5%, right? But there is still a gap between Silva and the top players in these statistics.
Yeah.
Right? It's not done. It's not that Silva, and I honestly, that's in part what makes it so impressive, is that there still is there's 10 percentage points for her to go in Circle 1 in regulation to catch up to Evelina. And yet Silva is playing better or as well as a lot of these players this season. And
let's look at the the all-around metric that is rating. It was ratings update today.
It was ratings update.
Silva +3 to 983. It's her career high. She's now tied with Owen Scoggins for the 4th highest rated player in the world, trailing the players we've been talking about, Kristin, Holland, Missy, as the clear standouts from the season so far.
Yes.
And, just to stay on the topic, right? Missy +3 to 988. She's at an all-time high. Kristin dropped from 3 points down to 1,000. Did I say Kristin or Missy? Did I say
You said Missy first. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
My brain is scrambly today. Kristin's back to 1,000. Woe is her. How about this? Jen Allen +5 to 964, career high, and her first time ever cracking 960. And she's in her mid-40s.
We were talking about this being a possibility. I didn't expect her to jump 5 points, though, to get up to the 960s. And Charlie, it's even more remarkable than that. In her career, Jen Allen has spent 106 months in the 950s.
Think about that. 106 months. That is nearly, it's like 9 years, basically?
Nearly 10 years. Yeah, 9 years, basically.
9 years in the 950s. And now is when she cracks 960.
Now it's the 960s for the first time. It's a pretty fun storyline. It's pretty great. So congratulations to Jen Allen. I know we were watching this. I'm curious to know if because remember there was that A tier that she was going to go play in Arizona. And I was like, please don't go play this. I'm curious if she did. Yeah, she did. Let's see what her rating was from that. Obviously it wasn't too big of a problem. It actually was a pretty bad tournament. I wonder if it didn't get counted. Now, bad tournament, she won by 17 strokes, but I think because of the field, it looks like it's going to average somewhere around 950. So not bad, but not what she needs to kind of bump her up over that, the 960 mark we were looking at. But I don't know if it got counted because it was the weekend before ratings update. So I'm glad she got her 5-point nod to get up to this rating.
This is not the official start of Mailbag segment, but I do want to ask this question here because I think it's very appropriate. This one comes from April from the Discord. April says, looking at how the highest rated FPO event records are dropping week by week, do you believe this season and last season to a lesser extent are truly shattering what was previously thought possible for FPO, or is this potentially ratings inflation in a rising tide raises all ships type of scenario? So just some quick rattle off stats. We already have 50% more 10-10 plus event ratings this year than we did last year. There had only been 6 all time prior to 2024. And there's been 6 this year alone. Twice as many 990 plus rated events as compared to 2022. 12 women have had a round rating above 990 this year compared to 13 in all of 2023 and 17 in all of 2024. 8 instances of players having 1,000 plus event ratings in a losing effort already. Last year, there were 7 of those. Prior to that, there was only 1 ever, and it was Missy at Worlds losing to Kristin. Kristin Latt's 2 best event ratings came from this season. Missy Gannon's best event rating ever came from this season. Ella Hansen's 2 best event ratings ever came from this season. You get the point. April says, I have to imagine that this is a combination of the 2 things. Both the highest level of play and depth from FPO we have ever seen, and also an effect of some ratings inflation, probably due more to course design suiting the women better than it ever has before. What are your thoughts?
As you were reading this, I was totally going to be like, okay, it's kind of the 2 things coming together, right? It's the FPO skill level clearly going up, the depth of the field clearly going up, and that's something that is very much obvious when you look at the skill set of those players. It used to be Paige out through the field by a mile. Oh, Paige and Katrina out through the field by a mile while still doing other things well. Now, here we are. Silva throws plenty far, top putter in the field, and we're like, man, if she doesn't get a forehand together, she might only get 1 or 2 more wins. Because these days, it's not good enough to be excellent in one stat or one element of the game, right? A glaring deficiency in any element of the game is a pretty severe limitation given the quality of today's FPO field.
Yep.
Clearly better. But I also think a big part of it has to be that courses are designed to facilitate the success of the FPO field. Imagine a north of 400 foot par 3 for the FPO field and flat ground. There's just going to be so many that are going to be drive, pitch up, putt, and it's just pars. There's no separation, there's no danger, there's no incentive to push for it.
Right.
And so you really don't have the opportunity for players to create that separation.
And it makes it look like a 910 rated player is equally skilled as the 970 rated player when neither of them can drive the green and they both take a par.
Yep, exactly. And so I think that is spot on by April to include that.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly there was a hole. Well, the last time LVC was on tour, and I saw this hole and I went, okay, so this is Evelina and Henna's hole. And they were on lead card or chase card, and neither of them even tried to drive the green on a par 3. And I was like, this hole can't be it, right? And I don't. That was not just LVC. That countless courses had holes that just had no incentive. I remember one. I don't remember what tournament. Ella Hansen, only birdie all weekend.
Yes,
won.
I remember that too.
Right,
that one
and it was
stands
a
out in my
crazy
head.
shot.
I have no idea what that tournament was, but I remember that hole. Let me just give you the numbers.
Sure.
In 2021, so that's just 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Katrina Allen led the field on the season in Circle 1 in regulation at 38%. Paige Pierce, Macy Bella Diaz, Jen Allen, Kristin were the next four. They were all in the mid-30s. Okay? Your Circle 1 in regulation percentages at the top of FPO today, 49.7% for Evelina, also 49 for Kristin, 46 for Holland, 43 for Henna, 40 for Silva. Okay? Like, massively higher than where we were 4 years ago. And that's basically a course design story. Now, yes, is there a skill story there too? Of course there is. I mean, Kristin's playing way better than she did back then. Evelina's playing more. Holland was like basically a rookie on tour at that point. But like, I think you could do this analysis going back over many years, and even like a monster arm like Paige Pierce was still not like way out in front in this category because holes just were not built for FPO properly until basically 2023 and last year.
And Charlie, can I add one more stat that I think makes this just really cements this? I think we should also compare it to MPO numbers in Circle 1 and Circle 2 in regulation. FPO this year, 49, Evelina Salonen, 49.6% in Circle 1 in regulation. Circle 2 in regulation is Kristin at 72%. If you jump over to MPO, Gannon Burr holds both of those, 51% and 72%. 2 percentage points off. He has two more in Circle 1, but Evelina's parked more than Gannon is. So it's clear because we have long felt that MPO is much better suited to their game and to their level. And now the FPO stats are lining up with MPO stats for this course design, very clearly indicating to me a shift towards a more appropriate level of courses.
Absolutely.
And a more enjoyable game to watch. It's a better
100%.
Entertainment product because of this.
100%. I mean, it's kind of a bummer that it took this long, but I give a lot of credit to the Pro Tour for this because I think that they've been instrumental in like making these TDs who are maybe thinking of FPO as an afterthought to actually step up and improve the course quality for the FPO players. So kudos to all of those involved with that because it definitely makes it more fun to watch. No one wants to watch someone has a 70-foot upshot and somebody has a 150-foot upshot and like that's the scoring separation. Come on. So one other note, I do think skill is also a story here. Like if you look, same thing, if you look at Circle 2 putting percentages from 2021, Heather Young led the field at 19%. And now you have 4 players over 20%. And maybe the like I think there's still a lot of room for improvement in specifically putting for FPO. But I also think that we're clearly seeing, especially at the top end of the field, like real serious improvement. I mean, look at Missy as a great example, as somebody who continues to improve her game. Her forehand went from like basically unusable to like a useful utility shot for her now that she throws when it's appropriate. And I would say that that evolution has happened even really since she lost at Worlds to Kristin. And there were like multiple times during that event where her forehand was just not quite good enough. And it's not like a monster weapon for her, but it's now like totally serviceable. Okay.
The other thing,
you got one more thing? Go ahead.
Yeah, the last thing I would add as well. I remember we had a conversation last year, I think, but maybe it was 2 years ago at this point, where we were talking about young FPO players and their capacity on tour. And I don't think it was in the context of Silva, but it may have been. And we were talking about, their prospects and who you would pick, who you want in the long run. And one of the big focal points was prioritizing players who had distance. Because it was the idea that, well, if you have distance, you can learn the rest. Silva is a good example that you can improve, like distance is included in that. That as the game evolves, these young players, even if they're not the furthest throwers yet, can and do improve regularly. And that growth in every aspect of the game should make fans of disc golf super excited about the future of the sport and the capacity for these players to continue to rise in level.
Let's talk about Niklas Antila, who's got to be one of the clutchest guys on tour this season. When he is in contention down the stretch, I feel like he's just been so darn good. And we have watched him go in these spots where like there's multiple players in contention and he comes out on top. Feels like more times than not. Now, he hasn't been Mr. Consistency. He's had some stinkers this year, but he's also, when he's been like on the lead card or near the lead card, I feel like he's played some of his best disc golf in final rounds. And he goes out and outduels Ricky Wysocki to win the Allay Open and, maybe put himself at or near the top of the list for player of the year front runner status. I mean, he's going to be right there right now. I don't want to overreact to a light field over in Europe, but he had to beat all those Europeans plus a couple of really strong Americans like Rick. He ends up beating Ricky by a stroke, able to lay up despite going into the hazard on 18 because Ricky couldn't knock down the putt. What was the story for you with Niklas this weekend and his ability to close it out in that final round?
Charlie, on my notes, I wrote down Niklas is so clutch. That was it. That was my takeaway. He has developed an ability, and there aren't many players like this, where they get into that final round and they're in contention, back nine, and you say, oh yeah, like this guy, even if it's getting to the point that if Niklas is down 2 strokes, I'd say 2, going into the back nine against a lot of players, Niklas has to be at or near the favorite still, despite the fact that he's down. Like that's how good he's been in final rounds, and when he is in contention, it very much seems. And the other takeaway, I guess the framing of that takeaway, it feels very Macbethian, in the sense that Niklas doesn't stand out in any one skill. You look at AB, you look at Gannon, right? And you see some of the furthest throwers our sport has ever seen. And you look at Rick, and he's just a scrambling machine, right? And you go down the list, and we can find, backhand turnovers for Isaac and the ability to shape shots. Like, name it, you can. I'm sure, like, most of these pros have something that, even if they are good all around, they are also excellent in one thing. Niklas isn't the best at anything, but he's good everywhere. And when it comes down to the pressure moments, I kind of want Niklas there. I want him on my team. And that is one of the highest compliments I can think of for a player, to have that kind of clutch gene. Now, like you said, some stinkers, and so it's not the same consistency, but boy, is he good when he's in contention.
You know, it's interesting because his putting has been mediocre to bad on the season. Didn't really have it in the final round. Missed 3 C1 putts, 0 for 2 from circle 2. Though, to be fair, one was a layup on 18, so let's call it 0 for 1. And it didn't matter because he was dotting the green over and over and over again. He was 15 for 18 in circle 2 in regulation, which is obviously, like, on its own an awesome stat. Like, he had a birdie look on 15 holes. 14 of those 15 he was in C1. So he was just, like, putting himself to mostly have, like, little easy putts. And after he missed 2 circle 1 putts in the first 4 holes, and then he only missed 1 the rest of the way. And mostly that's because he had, like, tap-ins. He had multiple putts inside of 20 feet for birdie. And he birdied, starting from hole 5 to 17, he birdied 10 holes and put together a 10 under, which was one of the best rounds of the day. Shout out to Laurie Lettinen and Holger Hawkinson for putting together 12 downs. Lowry was, like, way down the board after day 1 and ends up shooting 2 great rounds to finish on the podium.
Lowry also jumps 4 points in rating, just right behind Maury Villman now.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. Welcome back. I would love if Lowry became like him and Niklas. It's like which one's the best European on tour, and, like, they're competing and battling it out and both getting wins. Like, that would make for such an exciting storyline.
You know, Rick, does this feel like he's snake bit? Like, I'm having a hard time figuring out what's going on with Rick. I mean, he had those horrendous rollaways on hole 9, back to back, on a hole that was just delivering the rollaways right and left. And it felt like that just kind of, like, took the wind out of his sails. Now, to be fair, he did birdie the next 2 holes, but was way too slow the rest of the way. Only got 1 birdie from holes 12 to 18. And just didn't really give himself a lot of good looks. Like, I think he only had 1 circle 1 in regulation the rest of the way, and that was his lone birdie on the 15th. So, obviously a 3-shot swing when you're in command of the tournament and you came in looking like you were going to dominate and everybody expected you to win is pretty painful. Here are some other bad breaks here and there. What happened? Do you think that the 9th rattled him?
So it's so tough because, give him the 2 strokes from the 9th. And if Niklas makes his putt on 18, they're tied. Like, it's not like Rick, wins outright. It's not like the whole 9 completely in the score alone takes Rick out of contention, right? It's not Niklas's OB rollaway or a rollaway
right.
of Worlds,
where it's
right?
like it's curtains.
It's right.
Clearly, he could have still won. I mean, he only lost by a stroke.
Absolutely could have still won. Man, this has been there. There have been a couple performances from Ricky in the past couple. In the past, since and the one that I go to, I don't want to call it famously, but last year sure was the Pro Tour Championship when he led by 7 strokes on Gannon.
That was brutal.
It was brutal. It was brutal. And so Ricky has had this is not the first time Ricky has had a lackluster, and look at the guys around him, right? Niklas, 10 down. Lowry, 12 down. Bino, 10 down. Peter, 9 down. Nestori Tukkanen, 7 down, right? And you've got to go to Daniel Davidson, who was a wizard from the tee and could not get the putter in the basket to find another guy who shoots the same as Rick. And listen, Rick beats Daniel Davidson by 4 strokes. So it's clear Ricky had a better weekend and a good weekend, but it just, I don't know. It's felt a little bit off. And here's the other thing I'll add.
We're coming up on a calendar year since Ricky won.
Really?
His last win is at European Disc Golf Festival.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, he's been
close.
And it's not like you could say he's been bad.
No.
He hasn't been bad. He had 4 podiums down the stretch last year: D-Glow, GMC, MVP, and then of course Pro Tour Championship. And, you know, I don't think he's been electric to start this season, but he's got plenty of top 5s. He podiums at Kansas City in a weekend where I don't think anybody was beating Gannon. Top 5 Champions Cup, podium Cascade, top 5 Northwest, and now podium again Allay. So he's been solid, but like he's just not delivering the actual victories.
And the thing that was interesting on hole 9, and maybe I'm ascribing too much to one putt, but I think about his, I'm kind of going to work in reverse order a little bit. His second missed putt that had the rollaway, he hits top band, putts hard from down the hill after the first rollaway, putts really hard, hits band, gets an unfortunate rollaway. Okay, you know what? You ran the putt, you committed, and you got an unfortunate break. Hole 18, putts a good solid online putt an inch too high, right? Hits band. Again, committed. It was a circle 2 putt. It was great look and just a bit too high. Rick's miss when he is nervous has traditionally been nose down in the cage. And his first putt on hole 9, nose down into the cage, rolls downhill. And I don't know if he had known about the rollaways. I don't know if that hole was in his head or what it was. But I see a miss that is representative of Ricky's miss when he is feeling the pressure. And you combine that with the story of the final back 9, where he just is significantly slower than Niklas and cannot get clean off the tee. And it's hard not to think Ricky is feeling some pressure to get a win.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be frustrating because, you know, you figure you should just take a par there when you miss the putt, and it just ends up being this brutal disaster fest. But that's how it goes. I mean, look at the shot 1, circle 2, 36 feet to basket. Shot 2, fairway, 68 feet to basket. Shot 3, circle 2, 49 feet to basket.
Oh.
Shot 4, circle 1, 13 feet to basket. Double bogey. Yikes. All right. We'll see. Ricky starting off his Europe hot streak in a pretty good spot. Like, you can't be too mad about how it worked out if you're a Rick fan, because second to the best player in Europe is not any disaster. But you have to be a little concerned about the way he played down the stretch.
If you're a Rick fan, Preserve has to be very exciting for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Get back.
Lots of players have dropped.
Right.
Rick is great there.
I think he's got to be the favorite. Like,
oh boy, yeah.
Just because of how he's played there and the fact that he played quite well this weekend.
Yep. I think this is where Rick can break his drought, is at the Preserve.
All right. Quick notes on ratings updates. Gannon is +1 to 1058. He's still the number 1 player in the world in rating. That's one off his all-time high of 1059. Mauri Vilman hits a career high at 1037. Of course, winning 2 weeks ago in Europe. Didn't have his best showing this weekend, but someone I'm going to be keeping an eye on throughout this entire European swing. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got some mailbag, including a Reddit thread that kind of went off on Josh. So we will talk about that and mail from you. A little follow-up on Jomez. Stay with us. It's The Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Did you know that your bag could be selected as the valedictorian if you make a custom bag like this beautiful navy and steel custom octahole? You could be selected as the valedictorian and given a little shout out on the Pound Disc Golf Facebook page. Look at all of these beautiful custom bags coming out from the new 2025 redesigned Octo lineup. And if you don't want to wait, you don't have to wait for a stock bag, and you can get exactly the bag that you can imagine with custom zippers, fabrics, upper, lower, you name it. They got it all. And you can also jump into the Quarter Pounder Club and get all of the accessories at a big discount. So the Rainfly and the water pouch and everything else. So check it all out at pounddiscgolf.com. Buy it for life. Lock in. Get yourself the best bag you're ever going to own. Welcome back to the Upshot. So it's time for some mailbag, and I think we should get the big one out of the way first, Josh.
Not bury the lead.
Let's not bury the lead.
All right.
Over on the disc golf subreddit, a brand new Reddit account called DG Opinion writes a long post titled "Josh Mansfield has become a hack and is hurting the Upshot podcast." Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's long, but basically it complains about Josh's criticism of players, let's say lack of preparation, things that are annoying them about the way that Josh talks on the air, blah, blah, blah. And there's a long comment thread with people who agree, some people who disagree. There's been some discussion on our own Discord about this. So I don't want to give my thoughts right away. Josh, I feel like, you're someone who frequents the disc golf subreddit. It can be pretty painful to be the main character on the internet. So I thought I would just see, how you're feeling about this, and, if this has been difficult or just kind of how you're taking being called a hack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because it's something that I'm actually like, it's a familiar feeling. I'm used to it on a lot of socials when it comes to city council. And so I guess city council gave me a skill, and it's one that I feel like I applied here, of take the criticism, read it, and parse out what you can do with it. Right. Because there are going to be some criticisms that are going to be it's based in things that I might not be changing, that are about my, who I am, things that I can't change about the way I view disc golf. And, those things I'm not going to stress too much about. But there are also going to be things and points that are valid and have some truth in terms of their criticism and some merit to them. And from those, I take away and try and take away a constructive criticism. That this is the audience who consumes the product of the Upshot. And so it's important that I hear that criticism and can make changes accordingly. I want to jump first and foremost to the one that I think is the most valid and was probably the most repeated in the comments, and is one that is absolutely true. And that's been my preparation difference probably over the past, I'd say 8 months, 10 months, relative to my previous tenure on the Upshot. It's accurate. Studying for the LSAT was, and as a lot of you know already, I am going to law school. Studying for the LSAT was a big burden. I still had a less than 1 year old at the time. In that time, I've changed jobs. I've moved states. I've gotten accepted and had to apply to law school. And it's been a busy 8 months of my life. And those criticisms are valid. And the preparation that I had been putting in was not sufficient for this position. And I read those criticisms, I recognized them, and I took them seriously, and have taken them seriously, and will continue taking them seriously to ensure that my preparation is of a higher standard. There are some things that I will do better on, but it might be somewhat unavoidable. It's a joke in the Discord, and it really bothered some people about the fact that I yawn during shows. I will do my best. I get up at 5:30 to record this podcast. I don't sleep as much as I should because of my commitments. And so I will continue to try my best, and I will maybe make more of a point on the editing side to make sure to note when there are some very clear interruptions to the flow. And so there are some editing things that, and I could create those spots and opportunities where I think the edits could take place. But those are a little bit more difficult. And so, those are the criticisms that I took away, that I feel like there are valid and legitimate criticisms that I could make differences and improve my role and my quality as a podcaster in order to address.
Being an opinion giver on the internet means that you are opened up to criticism. And certainly we criticize players at times on this podcast. I do think, look, Reddit is not a place where you need to be, you have to give your real name. No one's really doing that.
Yep.
I personally find it a little off-putting that this is posted by essentially a burner account. Somebody who created an account specifically to post this because maybe they didn't want it attached to their previous Reddit posting history. Because one thing that, you do, Josh, is come on here with your face, your name. There's no pseudonym or hiding behind a screen. You're giving your opinions as they are. And I have to say, I think, and it's funny because I said this to Josh last week before this post was even made. I was like, I don't really feel like we've been doing a good enough job of preparing for the show over the last 6 weeks. And there's a million reasons for that. I think people maybe have to understand that my own personal schedule has ebbs and flows. So, people get annoyed because we do one show instead of two in a week. A lot of times it's because either I or Josh is traveling. I have a lot of commitments on the ultimate side. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Spain for a week or almost 10 days actually, for the under 24 Ultimate World Championships, where I'm going to be producing games all day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not going to be able to be as good on the podcast, and we might only do one show or something like that because I simply cannot create a full-time job just for Upshot. Realistically, it would be, right? To be a full-time podcaster and, editor of the Disc Golf website, yeah. It's basically its own job. I'm not doing that, and this is my full-time job, right? Doing disc sports stuff is my full-time job. Josh is doing this in the peripheries of his schedule. And that's not to make excuses, because I do think that we haven't done a good enough job of prepping for the last few weeks. And maybe some people would say longer than that, but I'm not going to use it is a lot to have changes to your life when you have a child, and parents will understand that. But you know what? This is a product that we want people to like and enjoy. And if they're not enjoying it, then giving us that feedback, I think, is important. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily know that the level of harshness here was warranted. And some of the things that are being complained about are not warranted. If you don't like the sound of Josh's voice, I guess, sorry. We got the best mics we could.
Yeah, it's my voice. It's not changing. I apologize.
Yeah. And my own personal thoughts here. I do think that sometimes Josh and I, for the same exact reasons that I'm describing, don't watch a full tournament on the weekend. And we're kind of having to do makeup with looking at stats and figuring out storylines to talk about, even though we haven't really watched the full event. And I think that's inevitable because, again, it's just not realistic without being a full-time content creator for disc golf, which if this disc golf podcast went away, I have to say, it wouldn't have a material impact on Ultiworld as a business. And so as a result, although I do prioritize this quite a bit, and we do more shows now than we used to, and I care a lot about doing a great pod, it's also not the thing that makes our business tick. And so if you want to help change that, you can become a subscriber, because that actually does move the needle. And we want to put time and effort into that and doing the reacts and all the other things that we do for our subscribers. So again, it's not to say that the criticism isn't unwarranted. I just think that like, I want people to understand the like general kind of like challenges of watching, especially in these stretches where we have tournaments for like 8 straight weekends in a row or 10 straight weekends in a row. It's pretty hard to commit to watching all of that when you have your other life and your other job and your other responsibilities and your family. Like, I think most people who are listening to this understand that like all live disc golf rounds are not going to be watched by basically anybody.
Charlie, I want to add one other thing that's funny. When I started with the pod, it was 1 a week with the occasional sub bonus on Wednesdays. So we had until Wednesday to catch up. And then us, in our ever brilliant wisdom, because it was COVID and we were childless, we're like, yeah, we could do 3 a week.
We were doing 3 a week for a while.
That's what we're doing. We got Tuesday, Thursday, and sub bonus.
That's true. I mean, it's in a way, it's still 3 a week.
It is 3 a week right now. And so we made those changes to break it up and do it more frequently to get to, because the problem was that we were doing reacts just way too late, right? When we were recording once on Wednesday, it was just way too late for tournaments. People were already looking for the next one, and every other podcast had covered the tournament by then. And so we've broken it out to 3, and we did that in the wake of, COVID, when neither of us had kids, and now life is back in full swing, and we both have kids. And so it's just been a different schedule than I think either of us expected. And again, not to make excuses, this criticism is absolutely valuable feedback that we need to take.
Right.
But that's, something else I thought was funny.
So some other thoughts I will have. I mean, because Josh is going to law school, there is some uncertainty about what kind of capacity there will be upon the start of law school. So we'll have to see what happens in terms of whether Josh can continue on the pod at that point. The plan is certainly to keep Josh on the pod if it is going to work. And that's a big if. And like, honestly, 1L is probably like way harder than the rest, is what I've heard from those who've been in law school. So we'll see what happens with all that. But I just want to note that, like, I've been doing this show a long time. I've done it with Steve. I've done it with Jamie. I've done it with Josh. And I think every host of a pod, myself included, has strengths and weaknesses as a podcaster. I think if you go back and you listen to the old Steve Hill, Charlie Eisenhood era Upshot, you're going to be bored because we agree on everything all the time. And one of the things that I think, Josh, that you and I have had a really good fit is that we don't always agree, but we both bring reasonable thoughts to the table. Now, I do think, looking through this thread, some people seem a little off-put by the level of criticism we are giving to players at times. And I think we need to be conscious of that, because this is not designed to be a podcast where we just come in here and just crap on people because they didn't win the tournament. Which, it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to make the narrative about like who won and who didn't win. And sometimes that's just the story. Sometimes that just genuinely is the story. And I don't think we're ever going to become a place where they're just like soft pedaling players who are struggling for one reason or another. But I think that we can be cognizant of the fact that we don't want to just like be bashing for no reason.
Sure. If one thing to that point there, Charlie, and that I think is a little bit different. This sport looks different than it did before COVID.
For sure.
Right. And my introduction to the media scene in disc golf came after COVID, and the days of and the way that this business of professional disc golf is run is fundamentally different. And I think that there are still some attitudes that linger about, this is because, it used to be, and it still is to an extent, guys traveling in vans and they've chosen to put the rest of their life on hold and because they wanted to pursue something that they love. And I hear you, and that's still true. But there are also guys who make $1 million a year. And Gannon said in his interview, I showed my dad that it was more financially viable for me to not go to college and to play full-time disc golf. And there are not many, beside, if your name was not Paul Macbeth, not many people were saying, I'm not going to college because it's more financially viable for me to play professional disc golf prior to COVID, right? Calvin went to college. He went to college while he was playing professional disc golf because he wanted that ball back and wanted to have a successful career in the wake of his touring. And maybe he still does want to be an engineer when he's done. But the fact that players can make that choice show that we are in a very different stage. And it is closer to other professional sports than it ever has been before. And it is their full-time professional job for which they are paid a ton of money. And I think that changes the way that we should and do treat disc golf. And I also think that it's disingenuous to not talk, and I'm going to pick the one that people love to get mad at me for, and that's the Calvin storyline. I think it would be disingenuous to every time Calvin is out of contention and shoots a hot round and gets up on the podium to say, yep, congratulations for a podium for Calvin, move on. Right? It's disingenuous to be thrilled about the Dallas Stars reaching the Western Conference Finals and not making the Stanley Cup, not being a disappointment, right? They fired their coach over it. Charlie, your Knicks just made the Eastern Conference Championship and they fired their head coach, right? It's like the standards for some teams, for some players is higher. And when they don't meet those standards, they receive
in a way, it's a privilege of excellence.
It is.
To be a subject to scrutiny over an inability to win a major, for instance. Many players don't win a major, and we never say their name because we don't expect them to win a major because we don't think they're capable of winning a major. But obviously, Calvin is one of those guys where you're like, he's probably the most notable player on the planet Earth right now that has not yet won a major, and it feels like they should. Now, Holland Hanley may be approaching that territory pretty soon. If she closes out this year playing the way that she is and she doesn't win a major, I think we're going to start having those conversations about Holland, as great as she is. But that, again, that's a privilege of that level. So anyway,
it absolutely is. But
I don't want to go on this forever. Email us your thoughts, please.
Yeah, please.
Good or bad. What do you like about the show? Where do you think the show needs to get better? What annoys you about the things that we do on the show? Because we want people to enjoy the podcast, and we will improve, as we always attempt to, over time. Upshot at ultiworld.com is the best way to reach us. And you can say, please don't read my comment on the air or something like that if you want. And we appreciate feedback, good and bad, always. Shall we move on?
Let's do it.
All right. Mailbag time. I want to start with this Jomez notes that we were talking about last week. And we were talking about, the length of Jomez videos starting to really kind of like grow over time. And some people have started to complain. We've gotten multiple emails about it over the last 6 months or so. And then kind of came to a head last week. So I wanted to talk about it on the show. And we got some other emails. Frankly, I don't really need to read them. Most people were like, yeah, it's too long. But we did have Glenn say Jomez is awesome. They had Chase Card and other relevant action, and people complain. Free next day coverage that you watch at your leisure. Some disc golfers just need something to complain about. But what I want to bring up is an email from Craig, who is the post-production manager for Jomez and has been working with Jomez full-time since 2022. He emailed in and said, I've been a regular listener for quite a few years now. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Wanted to give you a little context to decision-making. But to be clear, I think you both made some really great points that we will be taking into consideration. The main thing I wanted to address was the inclusion of chase cards and the idea of treating the post-production more like live in how we present it. An issue we run into is that we are editing with hindsight, and our audience is aware of that. If we only ever include a chase card player because they end up on the podium or winning, it can become a spoiler simply by the decision to include that player. If we choose to stop showing a player on a lead card, that communicates that the player is no longer going to stage a comeback. With these things in mind, we try to edit each round consistently so that our editing decisions do not communicate anything about the results. This is the spoiler crowd for sure. Now, I agree all of that can be overcome with some smart and careful decision making, but unfortunately, that is not typically an option with the time frame we do this work in. The front nine is typically edited by the time the round has even been completed. It is a lot more mental energy for an editor to be keeping track of scores and deciding when to show or not show players instead of just cutting every shot. I do think the formula you put forward is the best, focusing on storylines. That is our goal, and I think we are doing a fairly good job of it overall. Unfortunately, our team is still fairly limited, and some things are still a bit beyond our reach. I'm curious to hear your opinions on these challenges given the above context.
I really appreciate Craig reaching out. I never would, Charlie, we talked about the quick turnaround, and I knew they had obviously had a quick turnaround. I never in a million years would have guessed that the front nine would be edited by the time the round was complete. I mean, that is turnaround that I never in a million years would have contemplated. Here is the big takeaway I have here, or I guess the big thing that given the limitations that Craig describes here. I understand that there will always be some limitations in terms of implicitly communicating storylines by who you do and don't include in showing shots. And that's, a risk that you make. But I think it's one that you just simply have to accept as being the case, because I think that Jomez is straying too far away from its original appeal, which is quick, easy to digest, easy to show other people disc golf. I think generally people are right that we could cut down pre-shot routine time, except in the most important moments, to cut some time out. And given the context that Craig gives, we use the example of Paul McBeth playing poorly on the lead card at the Northwest Disc Golf Championship. And I think that at the turn after 9 holes, you say, Paul McBeth has really been having a tough round. Look at whoever from Chase Card and the push that they're making. And yes, it communicates that Paul McBeth is not going to make a comeback. But you got to rule one out, right? And I don't have a problem with that. And I don't have a problem ruling that McBeth is not coming back. And include a Chase Card, and it doesn't have to be a Chase Card that wins every time. Include Chase Cards who are just relevant and put them in instead of a player on the lead card who is not performing. Now, obviously, if you keep them in, maybe it keeps the intrigue of whether or not a comeback is going to be possible. But they're reached a point where choosing to cover both storylines is hurting the Jomez product, in my opinion. And keeping McBeth on that card and the coverage was not necessary, even if it signals implicitly that McBeth is not going to have a Herculean comeback in the back nine. And that's something I'm willing to accept in order to get a Jomez product that fulfills that original goal of quick, snappy, easy to digest post-round coverage.
Yeah. I mean, look at the round 3 times for MDG Media this past weekend. The final round, right?
Mm-hmm.
37-minute front nine, 42-minute back nine. And we're talking like 25 minutes shorter than the Jomez final round from the previous weekend per video. Like that is significant.
Yeah.
Significant. And I find myself finding this coverage much more pleasant to watch because it just has a crisper pace that I really want to see out of this post-production style. I think if you're going to commit to like live style in terms of showing lots of relevant players and bouncing more, you got to be more willing to do what live does, which is just dump players for playing bad. And if you don't want to do that and you just want to show the card, just show the card. And then maybe you add 1 or 2 players from Chase Card when it's appropriate, for mostly in final rounds. I just think like there's a middle ground. Craig's points about like we're already editing the front nine. We don't want to communicate what's going on with our with our editing decisions. I get that stuff. I really do get that stuff. But I also think like it's gotten to the point where it's overstuffed and the editing has become a little too loose, and you need to find ways to get those run times down sub 50 minutes again, I think. Especially for early rounds.
It kind of feels like it's the worst of both right now.
Right. Yeah.
And I think so I want to prioritize one of the two.
Yeah. Okay. What's next, Josh?
Yeah. So I want to jump over here to this question, Steven. This is one that we've kind of talked about, but we've asked the question a little bit differently. And I think Steven frames this in a really interesting perspective. Do Ricky Wysocki and Paige Pierce join the club of legendary players who don't win a tournament all year? Macbeth entered it last year. Over under Pierce and Wysocki having 0.5 combined wins in 2025. Now, I think the line is way too soft. I definitely would take the over on combined wins. But let me give you instead then, Charlie, independently, do you take the over on both Pierce and Wysocki at one win?
Ricky, 100% yes.
Especially,
I would be shocked if he didn't win a tournament this season. His level has been too high, right? It's like saying, "Oh, is Gannon going to win one?" After he didn't win the first 4 tournaments or something,
right?
Yeah, he's going to win one, and he has. Ricky will win one. Paige is such a tough call. Her level of play right now has clearly risen, but I'm wondering where the win will come. And is a higher level enough to overcome the ability to outplay, on a given weekend, Holland and Missy and Kristin and the other Europeans? It's just a lot to ask. I think I take the under, but it's I feel like it's super borderline.
It's funny because Paige is playing the best week in to week out disc golf she's played since the injury, for sure. Since the injury, maybe since Worlds, when she lost to Katrina.
Right.
You almost can go back that far.
But I mean, she is coming off third, second, third.
Well, that's what best week in, week out.
But, she was, 9 shots back of Holland this past weekend. She was 6 shots back of Missy the previous weekend. And she was 5 shots back of Missy at Champions Cup. That's a gulf that she's going to have to cross that I'm not sure she's going to be able to.
And here's the bad news, Charlie. Over the past couple of years, her win on the season has come on the West Coast swing.
It's true.
Europeans aren't there, and they are courses that are favorable to her style. And we're done with the West Coast swing. So it's going to have to come somewhere else on tour, likely with a full field of Europeans that she's going to have to beat in order to get it. It's a big ask. It's a big ask this year. But like I said, best week in, week out golf that she has played in a long time.
Are you taking over Wysocki under Pierce then?
I was really hoping you were going to ask me that. I think so. I think I take the same lines.
No easy buckets. Got to commit. Okay. Let's go to this one from Josiah. How do governing bodies of professional sports like the NFL or Major League Baseball typically make money off of sports betting? Is it just through heightened engagement and investment of the viewers trickling down money through other means? If so, what data is there about the potential increase in engagement after initiation of betting? Are there agreements between the governing bodies and the sports betting groups for compensation? Does the volume of bets alter the financial situation, etc.? Obviously, Josiah is interested in this because of the advent of betting in disc golf, although it feels like it's been pretty choppy to whether it's available or not, at least on the US sites since they launched.
Still trying to get there, yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I don't see lines ever. So I don't know what's going on with that, but let's just assume for the sake of the argument that we're going to have consistent options for daily fantasy and DraftKings moving forward. I think I'm not an expert in this topic, but I think the primary thing that the leagues are happy about is that more people watch when they are betting on games. And there's plenty of data about this. I think there's, something like, I'm going to say on average, 40% of gamblers watch more when they're betting on an event. As someone who bets on sports from time to time, I definitely care more and I'm more likely to watch if I have a bet on a game. The same thing is true for fantasy sports. That's why they all invest so much in fantasy, because people want to tune in and watch to see what their fantasy players are doing. And so, I don't know exactly like if there's a great metric for exactly how much more people pay attention and watch. But, I think from the Pro Tour standpoint, they're just imagining like people get more engaged. Maybe people discover disc golf through betting means. People who do start betting on disc golf are maybe more likely to buy a DGN subscription and watch live. And then, of course, these companies make money via both direct advertising from the sports books who are like sponsoring the league or sponsoring teams in the league, and potentially through affiliate marketing money. I mean, I'm almost positive, like the Pro Tour is always pointing you to this like NXT bets. And like, if you click on the link, then I'm guessing the Pro Tour is getting a cut, some sort of kickback for the sign up affiliate fee, the same way you would if somebody bought a pair of Nike shoes off your website. So that would be the main mechanisms. Whether there are other things going on at the highest levels, like NFL and stuff, probably.
Sure. Charlie, you actually didn't even touch on the side of advertising that I thought you were going to. You're right that there's direct advertising slots being purchased by betting companies. But if you assume that engagement is up and you can show demonstrable increase in your trends, you can charge more for your advertising slots for everybody else, right? One Shot Energy has to pay the Disc Golf Pro Tour more money if the Disc Golf Pro Tour can increase their viewership by 20% on a week in, week out basis because of sports betting.
Right.
And so the value is not even just concentrated in those who participate in the betting, but also extend to the value of all the kind of residual income streams around that sport and its entity. The other thing that I think is interesting is that there's a greater demand for coverage options and premium means of engagement with the sport in order to keep up with betting, right? I would be willing to bet, and this is pure conjecture, I have no data to back this up. I would be willing to bet that the percentage of fans who bet while watching Red Zone is higher than those who just watch the Sunday afternoon Fox broadcast.
Surely true.
They are paying money to watch 8 games at once because they have money on 8 games, and they are making bets in real time, and they are making bets as the game goes on. And so they are paying for a premium package to engage with that. They are paying for ESPN subscription services that give them additional analysis and lines and betting information and up-to-date injury information and additional streams and etc. And if betting becomes a big deal in disc golf, you could see a world where they have, like the DraftKings cams, and there are 4 cameras that follow specific players that are of particular interest on DraftKings lines.
Yeah,
and people will pay additional money for that.
You want some evidence? DraftKings became the presenting sponsor of NFL's Red Zone in 2023. Quote from the CEO: "For us, the NFL is the biggest sport, the biggest customer acquisition source, and the biggest chance to reactivate customers who maybe haven't been playing since last season. For all those reasons, being able to get more deeply integrated with the NFL is very important and very helpful for the business." So there you go.
Thanks, Charlie. So that's the other world I see Disc Golf Network taking advantage of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's a way to get more engaged with a sport. Fantasy, betting, everybody's looking for ways to get the hooks in you more so that you care more about consuming the product. And maybe you want to buy a ticket, makes you more likely to want to buy a ticket, makes you more likely to buy a DGN subscription, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. We got one more, Josh. What do we got?
Yeah. This comes from April in the Discord as well. April's got a couple of great emails in this mailbag. What, in your opinion, makes a good trophy for a DGPT event? What would your ideal post-tournament awards presentation be? We talk about how these things seem amateurish all the time, but I'm not sure we can genuinely agree on what is good or bad.
It's a tough question to answer. I think trophy is more like whatever for me. I think a trophy that you can actually like do something with, like whether that's like put it on your wall as a piece of art or play it like a guitar, or the chessboard. Although hopefully they got the chess pieces from the chess.com from last year. Like I like stuff like that because it feels like you could put it out in your house, or you could put it on your wall, or you could literally play the guitar. Seems more fun than like sort of a put it on your shelf type of trophy. But I also think that like really pretty custom, like the glass blown open trophies of the past, like that's really nice. Like, because these players do typically have a trophy case because they've won these A tiers and whatever else.
They're professional.
And I think that you just want to kind of try to raise the bar at the DGPT level with something that is like fun or interesting or useful. I mean, even something like the little Columbia rain jackets, like that's actually like a nice prize because it's something that you can actually use. As for the post-tournament awards and like sort of the whole ceremony that happens there, I don't know. Like I keep seeing people complaining that like the interview happens too fast. But what are we supposed to do? There's no clubhouse. They can't like go somewhere and do their scorecard thing and then come into the clubhouse for like an interview in a leather chair wearing the green jacket. Like that's just not happening. So what are you going to wait? You want to wait around for what? What do you want to wait around for? What are you hoping to wait around for? Like if you want to say they need to do their scorecard, well, fine. But then they need to get the scorecard done pretty quick because nobody wants to sit around and wait for the interview to happen. And I don't realistically think that you're going to get a better interview if you waited 10 minutes than if you waited 4 minutes. Like, if you want to get a more long, in-depth interview, you need to wait for the podcast the next week. So I don't really think that they're doing this wrong. And I guess I don't understand what the alternative is. I mean, they used to do the interview like instantaneously. And that was too fast, but they haven't done that for a while.
Yeah. First on the awards, I agree with you on the trophies. On the trophy side. Sorry, starting there. I completely agree with you on the trophy. Basically, if you're going to go a traditional trophy route, I want it to look like a professional sports trophy, right? A cup, not the one that it looks like you get for winning a Little League football game, but like it like looks like a professional trophy. The U.S. Amateur Trophy, by the way, that glass cup looked amazing. That kind of trophy, that level of quality, great. I also agree if you have something that's connected to the area, that is something that, if you had displayed in your house, people would go, oh, that's really nice. Not recognizing this trophy, also fine. In addition to the jacket, they did the blown glass vase for the roses that Gannon got. Also looked great, right? I love it. I think it's excellent. I think if winning is as big of a deal as we talk about it is, I think there should be a literal podium that you recognize third place and second place, and you put the winner on, or some sort of an award ceremony that recognizes
has existed.
That podium.
I've seen that.
It has, and and maybe this is a bit of a break from golf, and I get that, but I look at like Formula One recognitions, right, with literal podiums that they bring the racers up onto, and other races. I'm not an expert in Formula One, but you see those award ceremonies, they have the big backdrop with the name of the tournament, and they have a podium that they bring people up on. Like, that's a great look. And there's a reason that you do it, like that races do it, and that Olympics do it. And right, that podium and the physical act of getting to recognize the winner who steps on top of the podium is a moment of celebration for them. I don't know. I love it. I think, and yeah, it takes 10 minutes, right? And you got to have it set up and you roll it over. But I think it gives for some really amazing photo ops in addition to the end of the tournament. And I think that it should be, I would like a true award ceremony where you recognize podium finishers as well.
If they had the way to do that, and like the broadcasters could lay out and just the on the ground people took care of it, and they had like a real nice tight plan for like,
yes.
It ends. There's like celebrations on the green. And then after like 3 or 4 minutes, the players get into the podium and then they do the announcements and everybody cheers. Yay. And then afterwards, immediately following that, the winner steps down and then it's interview time. I think that would be fine. I think it's like, you have to remember that it needs to be broadcast friendly.
Yes.
Because otherwise everyone's going to keep complaining, right? It can't just be good for the people who are there. But I like the idea of having the podium finishers all up there on the little stand, and maybe they get a little, second and third place finishers get a small trophy or a medal or something like that.
Sure.
That would be pretty cool.
Listen, when they, now I don't know if you need to do interviews at podiums, but recognizing Rick as a podium finisher at the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship added to the emotion and drama of the moment. Right? Yeah, and then
he was like, what did he say?
I'm frustrated.
He was like,
what do you want me to say?
I'm so frustrated.
And listen, I don't think you need to interview AB after Portland, but having AB step onto a second place podium at Portland is entertainment. It's drama.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. It would add to an award ceremony, because those heartbreaking moments are part of it. They're part of the storyline, and they're part of what makes us watch. And so I think that's also an important element to it.
All right. That is going to do it for today's show. Wait. I paused myself.
Not quite.
Purse watching picks.
I was hoping you'd forget.
Allay Open, $64,150 total purse, $47,200 to MPO, $16,950 to FPO, $8,500 to the MPO winner, Niklas Antila, and Silva Saarinen took home $4,000. This comes in basically exactly at the same level as Konopiste, $442 per person. Konopiste was $444. This was up 8% over Turku Open's numbers from last year. So basically identical.
Yeah. I would expect the rest of our DGPT European events to come in at these exact near identical levels.
Picks. Let's see. I beat Josh this week. I didn't really improve my overall standing, but I definitely was right about FPO. Let it be known, I crushed you in FPO. I also crushed you in MPO.
You did. You crushed me in both. The fact that Sophia played so poorly and you got the podium and Rachel Turton.
What I tell you, Josh? Difference. All I need is one podium.
You're right. You're right.
25 points this week. In FPO, Josh got 12 3/4. Obviously, you had the winner, and Silva winning was a great pick this week. Silva was
at second place as well.
Yep. But Josh, your MPO picks weren't even bad. Una Heinonen, Mauri Villeman, Linus Carlson, -1. I feel bad for you because it's not like I think you went way off the board here.
I had a lead card player.
Yeah, yikes. Una dropping out of the top 10. Ezra Aderhold is dead to me, but I get points from Daniel Davidson, who got me 15 points for a podium finish. Mauri did not finish top 10 this week. Let's shout out the top pickers over at discgolf.ultiworld.com/upshot-picks. Congratulations to Moonrocks all alone with 35 points in MPO. Incredible weekend. Had Lettinen and Davidson for 15 a pop on the podium, and then Dennis Augustin also finishing top 10. Massive performance there, and Moonrocks jumping back into the conversation. Over at FPO, a bunch of, it's going to be hard to read them all. I think everyone had Kristin, Silva, Rachel Turton, which was your podium with the podium bonus. So it was 33 3/4 points. Van, BT Soccer, Zerable, Thomas, Eric, Lillian, Gasper, April, Sam, Tom, Normie, Aiken, Ike, Boogie, Thunderstruck, Adam, and Hampton. Nice job. Perfect podium.
Yeah. Shout out to JP2383, who is at the top of the picks right now with 258 points.
Yeah, 3 points in front of Hampton. So,
I think what's impressive for me about JP is that he has the most MPO points.
By like kind of a margin, right?
By like 15 points over Hampton. Right? Like that's what's even more impressive is the fact that MPO is much harder to call, I think.
Yeah.
So that adds to the impressiveness of JP. Hey, JP, Hampton, both stay flat, holding the 1-2 spot this week.
All right. That actually is going to do it for today's show. We'll be back with you on Thursday as we get ready for the Preserve. Keep it in mind, folks, if you're making picks or things, making bets, the players have been dropping a decent amount from this tournament. So both some Europeans who are coming back for U.S. Women's, but also I know Macbeth dropped. So keep an eye on that as we get into the weekend. So we'll have an updated list of players participating when we get into the show on Thursday. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on The Upshot. I mean on Thursday.